Psalm 34, 4 through 5 says, I sought the Lord and he answered me. He delivered me from all my fears. Those who look to him are radiant with joy. Their faces will never be ashamed. God, we want to thank you that we can come to you. God, we can seek you at all times when we're afraid, when we're concerned, when we have needs, when we just want to praise you. And we just thank you, God, for our city. We thank you for the commissioners. We thank you for the help and the wisdom that you provide for us every day. We ask, God, that you protect our police chief and officers. We ask that you would help us to be able to serve the people of our community well. We're thankful, God, that you have us here. We just pray that you help us to work well together. We pray for harmony in our city. We pray for good opportunities. And we just want to thank you, God, for all the help you give us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. And if you'll carry me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will call the roll, please.
Here, Teacher Jones.
Here.
Gross.
Here.
Chronic.
Here.
Peterson.
Here.
Yoder.
Here.
Corbin.
Here.
King.
Here. You have the agenda in your board packet. Are there any additions, corrections, or deletions? Please don't add anything, we have a million things to do, but that's just my plea.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
Moved and supported to approve the agenda as presented. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We'll open it up to public comment. Hearing none, we'll move along to the minutes of the March 10, 2015 meeting in your board packet. Any additions, corrections, or deletions?
Move the minutes be approved as presented.
Support.
Moved and supported to approve the
Pretty quick
minutes
in the draw there.
of the regular meeting, March 10, 2015. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We have the DPW report. Do you know if there are any additional items that Jeff wanted to cover on that?
Nope, no additions. Jeff's on vacation this week. He's burning some vacation time because they're pretty well caught up. I was speaking to Jamie this afternoon. He said they're doing really well. They're pretty well geared up for spring.
Good. Chief, do you have any comments?
Not this time.
Okay, thank you. And Jake, go ahead with your manager report, please.
Just a couple things to touch on for the good of the order here. Doug Piggott actually spent the weekend with his wife in Stanton to do sort of a commercial and residential inventory of the city. He's our master plan leader, and he's in the process of scheduling representatives from Land Use USA. They're going to be doing several data sets for us regarding our business and employment statistics and some other aspects. Let's see, the spring newsletter's gone out. It does include a letter from the clock committee, and then some other new sections, so look for that. It will be going out. It's at the printers right now. The planning commission members, they've completed that citizen planner course through MSU Extension. They all did a really good job, so kudos to them. That's pretty much it. I mean, we'll discuss the SOQs tonight, and that's really the main thing. So.
Was a cleanup day scheduled?
I don't believe we've scheduled one yet, but there's one on the calendar.
There's one on the calendar
Yeah.
for the 9th of May.
Yep, I think we just need to call and reserve the dumpsters. Yep, so.
The 9th is a Thursday? Oh, May. Yeah.
9th of May.
Okay, it would be a Saturday, Tuesday?
I'm not sure.
May 9th is a Saturday.
Saturday.
Mhm.
So apparently my request last year not to have non-Mother's Day weekend meant nothing.
We'll take that into account.
Moms clean up all year round. They don't need to clean out the garage and the basement on Mother's Day weekend.
I do have a question about that.
You didn't hear the first part of my statement?
While we're at it, how many dumpsters do we typically get? Because in Lakeview, they're talking about getting 4 this year as opposed to 3. And I don't really know what the need here is compared with them.
I think last year we used 3.
So. Okay.
And each
I know
year
we
it
were
was less
down,
and
right,
less.
yeah, because people get rid of more and more. They're,
Yeah.
you don't accumulate as much in
In a
a year's time as we have over
Because we
the
keep
course of
saying
time.
if you're outside of town, you're not supposed to participate.
Right.
Okay. So outside the limits, people aren't supposed to.
Well, I think they were pretty good about checking IDs for people they didn't know.
Okay.
I mean, DPW knows a lot of the
Mhm.
folks anyway, you know, whether they're a resident or not, they kind of just know a lot of people because they've read their meters and, you
Yeah,
know, all those
they
kind
know
of
the
things,
faces,
but
so.
I think they ask people that,
People
didn't-
would bring from out of town, and somebody who lives in town, and they just, that person would come. I think last year we said one pickup truck,
Oh,
we could bring.
okay.
right, and I think we eliminated some of those problems by taking it in versus, you know, some communities leave it out at their roadside and people would bring stuff in and just
Bring it in,
dump it and
okay.
hope someone picked it up, but.
Okay. That does actually remind me of something. I did speak with DEQ about that gentleman's request last time, and they said it's really hard to tell what the stipulations would be. It's more of a case-by-case thing, so I scheduled a site visit with the administrator of that program. He'll be here next month? Yeah, sometime in April.
As far as that,
The
the old city dump.
dump. So he and I will be going out there to survey it and see if it would be appropriate for that guy to come in and scrap some of that top stuff. And if not, then he's gonna also offer me some other potential strategies, and maybe some grant opportunities to get it cleaned up.
Excellent.
good.
Over time.
Good.
But
Other questions on Jake's report? All right, nose to the grindstone, we have bids, the RFQs to look at tonight.
So did everybody, they were posted to the Dropbox a week ago today. Did everybody get a chance to look through them? Everybody hasn't downloaded? Okay. I'm just gonna kind of run through some highlights in order, some broad strokes, and then I'll take questions on, or if any of you guys want to make points, we'll just kind of do an open discussion here. We'll start with Fleece and Vandenbrink. They should be all in your packet there.
It's the last one.
Oh, is that the last one in the packet?
Yeah.
Okay, who's the first one in the packet?
Well,
Go with their order.
Who? Row Professional? Okay, we'll start with Row Professional then.
I have it here. Let's see.
So, Row did a pretty good job as you guys saw, I gave you the actual RFQ that went out to the firms in the meeting that I sent them out. One thing I will highlight is their attention to detail and their attention to the specific requests of the RFQ. So, you know, their ability to come in under budget, their ability to be transparent in their contracting amount, separate from their construction cost amount, and then their ability to achieve grants. So I thought they did an excellent job with that. Obviously, these are all fairly high-end documents that we're going to be looking over tonight, so I'm just going to go based on what sets each one of them apart in my assessment. Obviously, their resumes were sterling, just like everyone else's that submitted. One thing I liked about their related experience is they really tried to focus on smaller communities when they're showing examples. So, you know, whether it's Parks and Rec plans, the Mid-Michigan Community Pathways at the Clare and Gratiot County level, Lakeview, obviously, they oversaw the Lakeside Park improvements there. You know, some baseball complexes that were really relative to kind of what we're trying to do here. The main keynote attraction to start with at this park is supposed to be the baseball complex that we start with, so I thought that was excellent. And then they also specifically highlighted some DNR funding, which is one of the major funding sources that we're pursuing for the grant. You know, those are the things that really jumped out at me. A lot of trail-oriented experience, which, you know, a big part of this as well is connecting the Fred Meyer Heartland Trail to the park that we're trying to create here. They've got some excellent project experience. The other thing that I want to specifically highlight about Row is something that I thought set them apart quite a bit. So I did offer extra space in the SOQ to tell us anything else they thought was important about their firm. And you know, when it comes right down to it, these firms are really trying to sell us on something. So you're going to get a lot of that typical rhetoric, you know, we weren't committed to excellence, we're this and that. I really like the way the last tab, so it's titled Work Approach. It's in the very end of their SOQ. I like the way that they did this. So they specifically broke down in 2 pages, you know, how they go about carrying us through a project. So, you know, developing their scopes and budget estimates, developing preliminary concepts. They really walked us through their approach and process and gave examples, which is something that I thought set them apart. So, you know, that's sort of my elevator, or 30,000-foot view of Row Professional regarding their SOQ. It's also been, I mean, obviously they all, for the most part, came with a pretty high level of quality. You know, the other thing I'll notice for customer service sake, they did provide us with 10 hard copies of these, even though I didn't ask them to. So, I thought that was, again, customer service oriented. I do have experience working with Rowe just for the good of the order. I've worked with them in Lakeview quite a bit. They have an excellent reputation up there. So, you know, I think they did a good job here. Does anybody have any comments or questions about what they saw in the SOQ?
Along with that information that they gave in the work approach, I really like the way they explained which staff would be responsible for which portion of it.
Yeah, so the green boxes at the top of it.
Absolutely, I
Yeah.
mean, very clear, if you're having an issue in this area, this is the contact person for that, and, you know, who overall is in charge and those kind of things. It seems like you had a lot of, as you indicated, grant experience, were able to obtain a lot of grants. I think that's a good idea, and they worked on state contracts, which I don't know if there's supposed to be a correlation, but you would anticipate there might be a correlation between being entrusted with state contracts and being able to get grants for the projects you're working on. So I think those were good things, and they've been, I think it was the last 4 years, they were noted to be in the highest growth in firms of their type of business. So I mean, they may not have as many employees as some of the others, but they are noted to be a growing firm and so forth. Obviously, a lot of parks and rec plans that particularly one of the individuals had prepared, and they're working on our master plan, so it kind of makes sense with the planning process. But
Yeah,
those were the things that I noted in looking at
Rowe specifically.
their SOQ, so.
Yeah, and I think you will notice that Doug Piggott is in this this SOQ. He'll do a lot of the planning and assist us in tying it into the master plan. So he'll do that regardless of who we select. But I think that is an advantage, the fact that we're working with Rowe for that project. So if they do tie in, I think that would be advantageous. The last thing that I will point out about Rowe, which I think is true for one other firm, but I don't, oh yeah, it is. They have an office located in Mount Pleasant, so they're relatively close by, which,
Pretty local.
yeah, and I think they're fairly local, which I think is also an added bonus. So, any questions or comments on Rowe?
On page 34, they have an estimated construction cost.
I don't think we have page numbers in the hard copy. Can you tell like what section you're in?
It's the sideway view of the table.
Oh, okay, thanks.
That would be under.
So they weren't shy about, they were not shy about putting in where they went over budget.
Yep, and they gave reasons too, which I thought was admin, like also, you know.
Added some things.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the main points of the RFQ, was to specifically cite examples where they, you know, came in under budget or on budget. So I think it shows some integrity professionally where they come in, you know, over budget on stuff, but they're still willing to stand by their work.
One other one had cost estimates, but they didn't go over on any of the ones they provided. It's like, that's a sales job.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely make those correlations. Although, to be fair, I did specifically ask for examples where they came in on or under budget.
Okay.
So, you know, that's specifically what I did ask for.
Will you remind us which board packet you put that in so we can compare the RFQ to the SOQ
Ooh,
language? Do you happen to remember?
that's a good question. Janet, do you know offhand which date that was that we put, when we sent the RFQ out, so the meeting that we had it to review? I don't remember specifically which packet it was, but I can pull it up,
I'm trying
but that won't help you guys.
It would have been in February, yes.
I believe so. I might have been February 23rd.
Bid selection, that's best practices. It was.
So when you were absent, it would have been February 24th, if it's the when you were absent.
Wasn't that in a packet? Would you have listed it as
I believe,
an
yeah.
item?
Yeah, I believe we had it in your board packets on February 24th, maybe, if I'm looking at my calendar right. Let's see here.
Yep, it is in the 24th.
Okay, so for reference, to see what we specifically asked for, you can look in your Dropbox packet from February 24th. But, you know, essentially the broad strokes are what we discussed in that meeting beforehand. So, you know, the ability to get grant funding, the ability to stay on budget, the ability to work closely with a representative and have, you know, a good project manager that we can talk to and communicate with. all those things are gonna be important as we go forward.
I didn't see anyone on row who was lead certified.
That might be true.
All the others had a lead certified staff on.
Yep, and I know that is something that, Police and Vandenbrink really wanted to highlight, so. Because I know their landscape architect, they have their director working on the project team, but I don't think it says anywhere that he's lead certified. And that might be something we can ask some more about if we grant them an interview too. Okay. Does anybody else have anything before we move on? All right, who's next in your board packet?
Home.
Home? Oh, OHM advisors.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was like,
Gotcha.
I think it's at home, I'm like,
Yeah.
what?
Half of my last name.
Oh.
Yeah. So OHM is an interesting case because they kind of cold called me right after I started, and I'm surprised that you haven't heard their name before because they're actually, again, relatively local. They do a lot of work in the mid-Michigan area, and so John Tanner is the one who approached me, and he actually is a Lakeview resident who's also an engineer, a project engineer for OHM out of their Mount Pleasant office. So they're the other firm that has a relatively local office. I mean, about as local as we can get regarding engineering. So I really thought they did an excellent job as well. They followed the RFQ closely. They put their best foot forward. And I will mention that they did this without asking very many follow-up questions. They really took this and ran with it. Every other firm, they ended up communicating with me after the fact, which was also stated to be okay, and asked some questions. But these guys, they took the bull by the horns and submitted something really good. So I do like, they do kind of represent a wide variety of contacts, but one thing I'll point out, and this is the same with Roe as well, they have a wide array of expertise. So you have architecture, planning, landscape design, electrical, mechanical engineering, structural engineering, surveying, and GIS services, all kinds of stuff, graphic design, all in-house, which is convenient and serves to save costs in the long run of the program. So
They also provide pictures of all the staff.
yeah, which is nice. Yep. Yeah,
They're easier reading.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you'll notice the production value on most of these is pretty high. I mean, a lot of pictures, a lot of different fonts and colors. Well, when you're submitting a 50-page document, you'll do anything you can to keep people on task, I guess. So, going through the project team, again, very strong, all of them with at least 10 years of experience. And even their newest people are well-educated and have several interesting experiences. I will notice, I also noted that OHM did the Montcalm Center for Behavioral Health. So,
Parking lot.
yep, they did a parking lot expansion, which, kind of, while it sounds sort of lackluster, it highlights a lot of the things that we need to focus on for this project. A lot of them highlight parking lots, but I thought it was interesting that they had done some work in Stanton I didn't know about just in the last year. So, they did the topographic surveys, the planning and specs, the construction oversight, the grading, all that stuff. We're going to have to do a lot of regrading, a lot of land clearing, a lot of installation of concrete parking facilities, electrical facilities. We're talking about building this great park complex, and it's easy for the imagination to run off to the baseball fields and the Veterans Memorial and the disc golf course, but the infrastructure needs to be laid first and foremost, and that's what we'll be spending our money on first. So I think it's good that, particularly I noticed with their resumes and some of their project experience, that they didn't do, all flowery projects. Look at how pretty our park we made. They highlighted in some of their experience improvements that are infrastructural, which is something we need to focus on. So, that being said, I think they're also probably the one with the most park-specific listed experience. I'll actually point you guys to, and I know it's numbered, I don't know what page number it would be in your packet, but their first project example, it's entitled Tatton Park and Farmers Market in Westland.
That's impressive looking.
What's the page number in your book?
Oh, 23, these are numbered, good. So page 23 of their SOQ. The overhead, this is a much larger installation than what we're talking about. I mean, this is like $3.5 million of build out. It's got water features, a full complex event center. We're not talking about anything like that, but a lot of the design is exactly what we're trying to accomplish here. You know, it's connecting walking paths and trails. It's creative use of parking, open green space, you know, facilities for public. You've got pavilions, you've got restrooms. It's just a really well put together park. I think that speaks pretty well to their abilities. Also, the Green Central Park in Green, Ohio, on page 25. Again, much larger installation than what we're talking about, but a microcosm of what we're trying to accomplish. So they really seem to have a mastery over landscape architecture and green space. They really put their best foot forward in these projects. So,
I'd like to see that one completed, that's
Yeah.
gonna be impressive.
yeah, I mean, they're slated for construction, the design's all done, so it's all the way in Ohio, but maybe we can take a field trip.
That's a 448 area code, that would be by Cleveland?
Maybe, I don't know. Green, Ohio.
We have them down that way.
Well, that's what I'm saying, 448 I think would be up north.
Green,
Yes.
Ohio.
Dayton's 453 and 454.
Well, the Green, Ohio, in here it says 442.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's in the greater Cleveland area, or actually the greater Akron area. So, yeah, about 50 miles south of
Well,
Cleveland.
too far.
No, not too far off at all. You know, but really, they did a good job of highlighting what we're trying to go here, which is our, you know, our keynote community component. So this big attraction that we have that no one else around really has. And I think they captured that very well. They also did a good job of kind of highlighting site development. So not just, you know, look at the nice park that we drew up for people, but also continuing services for engineering development, overseeing construction. I think they did a good job here. So I'd like to hear any of your guys' comments or questions on anything.
I really like, they took kind of advantage of that extra, I don't know, the extra space, but they added something extra that wasn't requested,
Yep,
that additional information, and outlined, this is what we're gonna do for you.
Yep.
I really like that. I'm a outline-oriented person, and they're telling me these are the steps they're gonna take as, you know, the basic plan, and, you know, we're flexible and we wanna, you know, design what you want, but this is what we intend to do at the base. And I thought that was,
They even
Good as well.
they committed to meetings with
Right.
the community in the SOQ, which I think is crucial. I mean, they're talking about 5 meetings minimum, getting community input. So, and then you're talking about 1 more meeting at the preparing the assisting us with our master development plan, which, you know, we're gonna kind of take the lead on that to save on costs and, you know, get some direct government to citizen community involvement, but we can tie all these things into this collaboration. So I think they did an excellent job there too, you're right.
With all the work they've done in the parks that they're talking about, and you said it was one of the things they've only given us 5 examples in there where they come under library.
Yeah, I think that's a good observation, so.
I'm wondering why just 5.
That might be a good question for them if we grant them an interview. And this is, you know, this is kind of the point tonight, and I should have stated this at the beginning, but it was in the RFQ schedule. So tonight our goal is to narrow it down to 3 finalists to schedule in-person interviews. So we do need to start thinking about who those 3 are going to be. So if you have questions for them, if these things are evoking, you know, more questions than negative comments, then it might be somebody that you want to consider putting up for an interview.
do you think of the examples that they gave, those are kind of what we're anticipating based on the project that you described in the RFQ, that those will be in the range or neighborhood of what our engineering costs will be?
I think so.
And maybe that's why they gave those examples specifically, because obviously that
That's
$5.5 million project, the engineering costs were, you know, way larger than we would anticipate
Yeah,
for a project of our size. So.
anything we're looking to do too. I mean, yeah, it seems as though they kind of went project specific for things that had engineering costs in the ballpark of what we're talking about. So that might be a good point. And I don't know, you know, I really gave them, I purposefully wrote this RFQ with a lot of latitude. to see what kind of differences we could get creatively and professionally. So I do think it's interesting that you point out the different ways that they're, you know, approaching that budget question, because that's probably the most prickly question in the RFQ, is we have to show, you know, when we came in under budget and when we didn't, and I think that's important. So might be a good question.
And they stuck really closely with the related experience kind of parameters that you gave them. But that is a good question, and certainly something you wouldn't want if these would only 5 they could pull where they were on budget and the rest of them were way out of the realm. Carl?
Jacob mentioned it, so I'm going to bring it up now. I was going to wait till the end. Is there some reason why we have to narrow it down to 3, since 4 came in? Unless you're going to make a recommendation, why are we limiting it to 3 instead of including all 4?
So the way the QBS process typically goes is you send it out and you designate best practice, and you always come down to, you know, depending on the number that come back, less than what you come at with the first review. So, you know, if that's something you guys want to deviate from, we can talk about that and interview all of them. But typically, you try to have just the same way you do first round, second round. So this would be sort of a first round of scrutiny, and then you really pick 3 that you feel did better than the others, which I understand. Initially, we had 6, just to touch on that. 1 backed out, and then the other one requested more time, which I did not grant because they wanted another 2 weeks, and we gave them 3. So I didn't think that reflected good customer service. And the reason they gave is that they have so many projects right now that they were behind, and I was like, well, that doesn't bode well for what we're trying to do. So we respectfully declined to offer to accept an extension. So we ended up we can interview 4. I think we should probably try to actually do a narrowing process, because that is also what we committed to in the RFQ, is moving on to second round interviews, picking 3. From, you know, the engineer's side of things, if they come at it as a finalist, they're planning on being a final 3. If now we change the rules in the middle of the game, I don't think, it may not be a big deal to us, but to them,
Was that in the original proposal?
in the schedule that we sent out, I don't know if I meant to
That's what I was
stipulate.
looking too.
It might not stipulate specifically 3, but I think it does. We'll check.
I was trying to look at that too, but.
It just seems to me that that's arbitrary when you have 4 qualified firms that are presenting good material. It seems arbitrary just to limit it to 3 unless there's glaring discrepancies or shortcomings in one of them.
I think that's a very logical way to come at this. The reason that we are trying to stick to the schedule based on what we're doing now is to stick to the best practices of QBS. But, you know, if we as a group think it would be better to interview all of them, here we go. Review and selection of interviewees, preferred firms. I don't actually stipulate a number. So, I mean, we could potentially, it says on 324, yeah. So I think we could actually interview all 4 if we want to, but maybe we should finish going through all of them and then decide.
Well, I guess my preemptive question would be, do you plan on pointing out one that you think is efficient?
Well, I do think, and I think it's fairly obvious looking through the SOQs, that 3 did much better with the requested, you know, project than the other one did.
Okay, I'll wait
Yeah.
for your comment.
But, you know, that doesn't mean that we need to keep them out, but we'll see. So
Home has on page 43 and 44, Home has over a page of grants that they
Yeah.
secured.
Wow.
most of which were MDNR trust fund grants, which are what we're trying to get done. One thing I will notice that I thought was maybe crafty on their part is they don't delineate whether or not those are acquisition grants or development grants. So what I mean by that is they don't say whether or not they were used to buy land, which 75% of MDNR trust fund goes to, or 25% development grants, which is what the other 25% is used for. So, and which would be what we're trying to get, is a development grant.
And you didn't ask specifically, you just asked generally.
I just asked for general grant experience, because even if someone has never done a trust fund grant, I want to see what kind of grants they had done for parks projects. So, but you will notice, I mean, they did a lot of DNR grants.
Wow.
They also, it shows that they're working with small communities, because you'll also notice they've gotten a lot of USDA community facilities grants, which are only offered to rural communities. There's some other good stuff in here. NatureWorks is a good grant program through Ohio. It's very similar to the trust fund. And then they've got recreational trails, they've got lots of good stuff in here. So CDBG example, which those are tough to develop and get, so that's interesting. Yeah, I think that's good to point out too, John. I think they did put forth the most specific grant receipts.
They also, I mean, I don't know what this means, but in that over a page of grants they've secured, there are multiple grants for any one municipality.
Oh, I see. So they're not pointing out like we got, 2 grants here, or they're doing a different.
City of Hancock is 1, 2, 3 different
I see
grants
what
that
you're
they secured. I don't know if that's all one package grant, if they did 3 different projects up there.
Well, they say what the program, or what
It's up there,
the
carrying
project was
different
for.
grants.
Yeah, like Quincy Building Blight Elimination, Navy
Looks like they're
Street
different,
Boardwalk.
yeah, looks like they're different projects, because it kind of says the name, the location, the project, and then what type of grant, so.
Mhm. But they do have, again, it really shows that they work with a lot of small to medium-sized communities, which is good.
What size was Roe working with?
Size communities?
Yeah.
I think they kind of run the gamut. They have, they do work with a lot of smaller communities, and they're planning engineers, they're client engineers is what they call them. They'll have a certain number of clients, and I think they kind of specialize. So one of them might work with mostly small municipalities. You might have one guy that works with just Grand Rapids, et cetera, et cetera. But I will say again, Roe has done an excellent job in Lakeview, and the customer service level is very high, and it didn't take me very long to realize that there. And I do know that they've also worked, Lake Isabella area, which is smaller, and then they were talking to me about some other smaller communities that they did on the southwest portion of the state too. So I don't remember specifically the names, but I think they all probably have some experience with small communities. I like the fact that OHM specifically picked, examples of achieving grants in small communities, doing projects in small communities. I think that was a good job on their part, because that's going to be important to us going forward. Because if we get a planning engineer in here that's used to working only with Grand Rapids, Detroit's, Fort Wayne's, things like that, that the value set there, the financial realities and things might be different than what we're trying to get done here. So experience working with smaller communities is going to be crucial. Any other questions or comments on OHM?
The compliment was given about how they laid things out in their extra page. When they limit it to one meeting though, I get a little nervous. Like, well, why limit it to one meeting?
Well, I think,
It's like,
I think they're trying to estimate the total number of community input meetings that they're going to have. That doesn't necessarily mean the only number of times they'll meet with us as, city officials. I think they're talking about specific meetings with the community. But if we decide throughout the process that we need more public input, then I'm sure any firm will be open to doing more public input. The only problem with that is it's an associated cost, and it's going to potentially throw the budget.
years ago, when we were trying to do a plan, they did a public focus group, and they invited the public to come here, and 3 people showed up, and they were done with their community input.
Yeah, see, that's not acceptable. So
Right.
we need to make sure that, part of this we need to remember is we're the owners here, we're the stakeholders, and we represent the wider community.